It begins, as it always does, not with a vision, but with the sound. A sound that has no physical component. A psychic cacophony that crashes against the shores of my consciousness. It is the chorus of infinity. The shriek of a billion potential futures. All dying and being born in the same moment. To the uninitiated, it would be a wave of pure madness, a force to shatter the soul and scour the mind to bleached, gibbering bone. For me, Farseer Idranel of Ulthwé, it is merely the dawn. My sanctum, the dome of labyrinthine echoes, does little to mute it. It is not built, but grown. A lattice of psycho-receptive crystal that breathes with the faint, psychic exhalations of the craft world. Each facet, impossibly smooth, does not merely reflect the starlight filtering through the dome. It refracts possibility, casting shimmering, transient ghosts of what might be across the wraithbone floor. Here, a child laughs, his form woven from pale moonlight. There, a warrior falls, her dying breath a wisp of shadow. They are meaningless, the surface foam on an infinite ocean of fate. The real work lies deeper. My body is a vessel, an anchor of flesh and bone I inhabit with a growing sense of detachment. I feel the chill of the air on my skin, the weight of my ceremonial robes, the heavy psychic dampening of my ghost helm, settling over my mind like a shroud of calming lead. Without it, the chorus would consume me. With it, the shriek is merely a roar, a storm I must navigate. I move to the center of the dome, where the heart crystal pulses with a slow, internal light. This is my loom, my scrying pool, my altar of sacrifice. I place my hands upon its cool surface, close my physical eyes, and let my true sight open. To gaze into the skeins is to drown, not in water, but in light and sound and sensation. An ocean of fracture. These are the threads of causality, the pathways of the future. The brightest, thickest chords are the major currents of history. The mindless, rampaging green tide of an Ork Wa, the cold, silent advance of a Necron dynasty, the slithering, corrupting tendrils of the great enemy. Our own threads, the threads of the Eldari, are so few, so frighteningly fragile. They glitter with a defiant, beautiful light, but they are thin as spun starlight, and they fray and snap with appalling ease. My purpose, the burden of every Farseer, is to be the weaver, to gently pluck one thread, to nudge another, to sever a third entirely, all to keep our great tattered tapestry from unraveling completely. Every touch is agony. To guide a thread is to feel the echoes of the futures I prevent. When I steer a fleet away from a void battle they cannot win, I feel the phantom blaze of their ships, hear the spectral cries of their crews burning in plasma fire. When I alter a diplomatic envoy's course, I experience the torturous death he would have met, the slow poison, the betrayal. I live 1,000 deaths a day, and my soul is a graveyard of ghosts I myself have saved. This is the price. It is a price we have paid since the fall, since our hubris birthed the god of pain and shattered our empire into glittering dust. We are the survivors, and survival is a bitter, bloody triage. Today my focus is a small thing, a mote of dust in the grand storm of the galaxy, yet no less vital. A team of rangers scouting the blighted fringes of the segmentum obscurus. Their thread is a faint silver, darting near a thick, greasy, disgusting cord of snarling green. An orc infestation, still nascent, but growing. My task is simple, to discern the threat and guide our warriors to excise it before it becomes a true invasion. I extend my consciousness, following the silver thread of the ranger cadre. I see them through the skeins, phantoms of grace and shadow, moving through fungal jungles on a forgotten world. I can feel the dampness of the air, smell the thick, earthy stench of the greenskins. And then I see the node, the nexus of choice. Two primary pathways diverge from this moment. The first path glows with a soft, mournful light. The Rangers locate the primary spore chamber of the Orc leader, a nascent war boss. They succeed in their mission, planting beacons that will allow our fleet to pinpoint the heart of the infestation for a clean, surgical strike. But the path ends there for them. An ambush, brutal and swift. I see it with sickening clarity. The flash of a crude chopper, the surprised gasp of the lead ranger, a young soul named Larion. I feel the splintering of his bones, the final fading light of his spirit stone as it fails to capture his essence in the psychic chaos. All of them die. But their sacrifice ensures the nascent Wa is strangled in its cradle. A nearby maiden world, pristine and untouched, remains safe. Its thread continues, bright and unbroken, for another standard millennium. The second path is warmer, more immediate, more tempting. I can save them. A subtle push, a whisper of warning into the lead ranger's mind, disguised as instinct. Danger left. He would heed it, his finely honed senses accepting the psychic intrusion as his own. They would evade the ambush, escape with their lives, their silver thread continuing on. But they would miss the primary chamber. The intelligence they return with would be incomplete. The strike team we dispatch would hit a decoy, and the war boss would be alerted. The Wa would coalesce, not immediately, but over the coming decades. It would grow into a monstrous green tide, and in its mindless fury, it would wash over that same maiden world. I see that future too. The burning forests, the shattered crystal spires, the billions of lives extinguished in a firestorm. The bright thread of the maiden world blackens and snaps. 5 lives versus billions. The calculus is as simple as it is monstrous. It is a choice I have made 1,000 times in 1,000 different ways. It never gets easier. My soul weeps for Larion, for his comrades. I knew his grandfather. I saw Larion as a child, his eyes wide with the wonder of the craft world. And I must now author his death. I must become his murderer to save a world he will never see. This is the burden. This is why our race is dying. Not from the blades of our enemies, but from the weight of our own choices. We die a little with every soul we sacrifice. Our spirit thinning. Our hope turning to pragmatic, cold ash. I prepare to make the necessary adjustment. to gently nudge fate onto its blood-soaked but optimal path. My will gathers, a pinpoint of psychic force ready to ensure the Rangers find the spore chamber and walk into their doom. But as I focus, something is wrong. A flicker, an anomaly in my own sight. For an infinitesimal moment, as I peer down the corridor of time at Larion's final moments, the edges of my vision blur. Not my physical vision, but my true sight. It is as if a mote of darkness, a fleck of absolute nothingness, has fallen upon the lens of my soul. I recoil, the connection wavering. The skeins shimmer and distort. The sensation is utterly alien. My sight has always been perfect, absolute. This was a blind spot, a tiny patch of non-existence in the heart of my perception. It vanishes as quickly as it appeared, the clarity of the vision snapping back into focus. Larion stands frozen in the river of time, Choppa raised above him, his fate waiting for my command. The incident. Our sight is our greatest weapon, our only shield against the darkness. The thought that it could be flawed, that it could fail, is a terror beyond the comprehension of my waking mind. I push the doubt away, back into the dark corners where I keep my grief and my fear. The choice remains. The scales of fate are balanced, waiting for my thumb. With a soul heavier than a dying star, I reach out. I do not whisper, "Danger left." I do nothing. I hold my will in check, and in my inaction, I condemn them. The seed of change has been sown, not just for them, but for me. The shadow of that tiny, fleeting blindness lingers, a cold premonition that my own path is beginning to fray. The silence I imposed upon the skeins was my verdict, and fate, the ever-obedient executioner, carried out the sentence. I did not turn my mind's eye away. That is a cowardice a Farseer cannot afford. I bore witness. I watched the silver thread of Larion's patrol flare with the brilliant, terrible light of its end. My consciousness, stretched thin across the gulf of space and time, became a silent observer in that fetid fungal jungle. I felt the sudden, sharp spike of alarm in Larion's mind, a fraction of a second too late. I saw the brutish, green-skinned form lumbering from the spore-choked shadows, its crude weapon a cleaver of rusted metal and raw hatred. I felt the impact, not as a physical blow, but as a psychic schism, a violent severing of a life thread that sent a shiver back through the entire web. I heard his dying thought, not a curse or a prayer, but a single crystalline image of the dome of the azure sun on Ulthwé, a memory of home. The thought was extinguished like a candle in a hurricane. One by one, the other four threads winked out, each a small, silent tragedy in the vast uncaring. They did not scream. They were a pressure, a cold weight settling in the marrow of my soul, a fresh layer of frost on a heart already frozen by eons of such choices. The maiden world's thread, in contrast, now shone with a renewed, placid brilliance, ignorant of the price paid for its continued peace. I had traded 5 of our precious few for billions of a potential future. The arithmetic was flawless. The reality was poison. As I withdrew my consciousness from the bloody tableau, the blindness returned. It was no longer a fleeting mote. This time, it was a tear, a jagged rip in the fabric of my sight. It descended over the vision of the maiden world, blotting out its serene glow with a patch of utter, absolute void. It was not blackness, for black is a color. It was not emptiness, for the void itself has a presence. This was a true nothing, a cessation of information, a hole in existence itself, a wave of vertigo so profound it felt physical washed over me. My grip on the heart crystal faltered, and for a terrifying moment, the roar of the infinite futures I held at bay with my ghost helm threatened to break through. A tsunami of raw chaos poised to scour my mind. I clamped down my will, reinforcing the psychic wards of my mind, my knuckles white on the crystalline surface of my loom. The blindness held for 3, 4, 5 heartbeats, an eternity in the timeless realm of scrying, before receding, leaving the image of the maiden world pristine once more. But it left a psychic afterimage, a stain on my inner vision, like staring at a sun and then looking away. I stumbled back from the crystal, my breath coming in ragged shudders, my physical body finally asserting its own terror. The chill of the sanctum floor felt like a tombstone against my bare feet. That was no flicker of fatigue. That was a wound. Something was breaking within me. In the cycles that followed, I began to call it the crystal blindness, for it felt like a flaw growing within the very lens of my soul, a cataract of non-being. At first it manifested in small, insidious ways. While tracing the commercial routes of a void sailor fleet, the name of their destination port would be obscured by a patch of void. While observing the political machinations within a nearby imperial sector, the face of a key inquisitor would simply not be there, a hollow space in the tapestry where a person should be. I learned to work around it, to infer the missing data from context, to make educated guesses where once I had possessed absolute certainty. But every inference was a gamble, and the stakes were always the lives of my people. The constant strain began to wear on me. I spent more and more time in my sanctum, my isolation deepening not out of choice, but out of a desperate need to hide my growing infirmity. My acolytes would bring me sustenance, leaving it by the sealed wraithbone door, and I would offer them only silence in return. How could I explain that their Farseer, their guide, was slowly going blind? Such a truth would be a death sentence for the morale of the entire craft world. We, the seers of Ulthwé, were the rock upon which all our hopes were built. If that rock crumbled, the tide of despair would wash us all away. The true test came when autarch Kaelor requested an audience. Kaelor was the epitome of the warrior path, sharp, decisive, his mind a honed blade of strategic perfection. He moved with a predatory grace that belied the immense weight of his war mask, a stylized hawk of polished silver and obsidian. He did not ask for my time. His very presence at the gate of my dome was a command born of necessity. I could not refuse him. To do so would be to admit weakness. I let him in, composing my features into the serene, impassive mask of a Farseer, a mask that felt increasingly like a lie. "Idranel," he began, his voice crisp and devoid of preamble, the modulated tones of his helm hiding any hint of emotion. "The listening posts on the eastern fringe have detected a convergence of Drukhari raiding fleets. They are hunting. Their patterns are erratic, but I see a potential vector towards the Exodite worlds of the Cadian Belt. I need a path, the single point of vulnerability, where a decisive strike from our Shadow Spectre squadrons can shatter their command structure before they can threaten our cousins." His request was clear, his need absolute. This was my purpose, to provide the single perfect thread of victory from the tangled mess of possibility. I inclined my head and turned to the heart crystal, extending my hands, praying to ancestors I knew could not hear me, that my sight would hold true. I opened my third eye and plunged into the skeins. The threads of the Drukhari were there, a chaotic violet-black web pulsating with malice and glee. They moved like sharks in the dark water of the void, their paths weaving and fainting. Kaelor was right. Their trajectory was a wide, sweeping arc, but several of the strongest threads pointed like daggers towards the Cadian Belt. I followed them, seeking the nexus point, the moment of convergence Kaelor needed. And then I saw it, a vast, derelict space hulk, a graveyard of ships from millennia of forgotten wars. The Drukhari would use it as a temporary staging ground, a place to refuel their slave holds and torture their captives before launching their main assault. There, their Archon would be aboard his flagship, momentarily vulnerable. This was the moment. This was the key. I focused my sight, preparing to discern the precise temporal window, the exact location of the flagship, the patrol routes of their outriders, the minutiae that meant the difference between a flawless victory and a suicidal ambush. The void opened. It was not a patch or a tear this time. It was a chasm. It fell directly over the space hulk, swallowing it whole. I could see the threads leading to it, the threads leading away from it, but the critical event itself was gone, replaced by a horrifying, silent abyss in the heart of causality. I saw nothing. No flagship, no Archon, no patrol routes, just a gaping hole in the future. Panic, cold and absolute, seized me. My composure almost broke. I could feel Kaelor's unwavering gaze on my back, his patience absolute, his faith in me complete. That faith was a physical weight, pressing down, threatening to crush me. I could not tell him I was blind. I could not say, "I do not know." The words themselves were heresy to my path. My mind raced, sifting through the remaining peripheral threads. The Drukhari were arrogant. They favored shock tactics. They would feel secure in such a desolate place. It was a guess, a desperate, horrifying gamble based on racial psychology, not on the pure light of prescience. I pulled back, turning slowly from the heart crystal, my face a mask of serene contemplation. "The carrion coil," I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the terror that screamed within my soul. "That is what the monkey called the Hulk. They will gather there. But their Archon is vain. He will not hide his flagship deep within the debris field. He will display it, a predator sunning itself on a rock. Approach from the nebula's shadow, from below the galactic plane. He will not expect an attack from a direction with no tactical advantage. He will expect one of speed and precision. Give him one of patience and stealth. Strike at the apex of the third moon's transit. His personal guard will be engaged in their rituals. He will be distracted." Every word was a carefully crafted lie built around a kernel of guesswork. It sounded like the cryptic poetic guidance of a Farseer, but it was the panicked an unusual strategy against the Cabalites. "But your sight has never failed us, Idranel." He bowed, a gesture of profound respect that felt like a brand of shame on my spirit. "It will be as you say." He turned and strode from the dome, leaving me alone in the echoing silence. I collapsed against the heart crystal, its cold surface doing nothing to cool the fire of my shame. I had just sent hundreds of our finest warriors into a battle based on a guess. I had gambled their souls on a piece of theater. The isolation was now absolute. I was no longer just hiding my weakness. I was actively deceiving my own kind, and in doing so, I had become the greatest threat Ulthwé faced. My fear turned to a cold, desperate obsession. I sealed the dome of labyrinthine echoes, barring entry to all. The outside world ceased to exist. There was only my sanctum and the spreading disease in my soul sight. I abandoned the grand skeins of galactic fate, the wars and migrations of lesser races. My quest turned inward. What was this affliction? Was it a curse from the great enemy? A subtle psychic poison designed to cripple us? I scoured my own mind, my own soul, searching for any hint of demonic taint, any whisper of corruption. I found nothing but the old familiar griefs and the fresh, raw terror of my condition. I delved into the crystal databanks of the dome, communing with the psychic imprints of the Farseers who had come before me. Their wisdom was immense, their experiences a library of impossible sorrows. But nowhere was there any mention of a Farseer's sight failing in this way, of it being consumed by a void. There was only one place left to look: my own future. With a sense of ultimate dread, I returned to the heart crystal, its light now seeming menacing, judgmental. I did not look for others. I looked for myself. I cast my consciousness into the web and sought the single pale silver thread that was Idranel of Ulthwé. I found it easily. A cord that had run true and bright for centuries, interwoven with the fates of so many others. I traced my own past, my time as a warlock, my ascension to the path of the seer, the countless battles guided, the countless sacrifices made. I saw my recent decision to condemn Larion, a knot of shadow and sorrow on the thread. Then I pushed my perception forward, along the path of my own life to come. The thread continued from the present moment, but it was wrong. It was fraying, the light within it dimming, its edges becoming translucent and indistinct. It stretched forward for a few more cycles, a few more choices, and then it simply stopped. It did not snap. It was not severed by a blade or burned by a fire. It ran directly into a vast, silent ocean of the nothingness. The same void that had been plaguing my sight. My future was not death. It was not pain. It was not transformation into crystal. It was a blind spot. My own thread ran to the edge of the abyss and vanished into it. The crystal blindness was not a flaw in my perception of the universe. It was the universe's perception of my own imminent non-existence. I was looking at the end of my own story, and the pages were blank. For a being whose entire existence was predicated on seeing what was to come, there could be no greater horror. Not to see a terrible fate, but to see nothing at all. I was a guide walking towards a cliff that only I could not see. And I knew, with a certainty that transcended sight, that at the edge of that cliff, one final monumental choice awaited me. A choice I would have to make utterly, terrifyingly blind. The transformation was complete. I was no longer just a Farseer with a failing gift. I was a ghost walking in my own final moments, utterly and irrevocably alone. The wait was a new kind of torture, a silent, hollow agony that dwarfed the psychic screams of potential futures I had known my entire life. Before, I was a god in my own small way, weighing lives and authoring fates. Now I was merely a prisoner in my own skull, staring at the blank wall of my own oblivion, waiting for the echo of a choice I had made in fear and arrogance. I did not dare touch the heart crystal. I did not dare look into the skeins. What would I see? Confirmation of Kaelor's doom, authored by my own fraudulent hand? Or would I see nothing at all, my blindness now so complete that even the fates of others were obscured by the shadow of my own end? The silence in the dome was absolute, broken only by the phantom whispers of my own conscience. A chorus of all the souls I had ever condemned, with Larions leading the accusation. I, Idranel, who had sacrificed so many for the sake of certainty, had sacrificed my finest warriors for a guess. The irony was a blade twisting in my soul. It came not as a cry, but as a psychic shockwave of pure, unadulterated terror. A wave of violet-black agony and the sharp, metallic tang of betrayal that slammed into my sanctum, making the very crystals of the dome vibrate with sympathetic horror. It was Kaelor. His mind, a fortress of discipline, was broadcasting a single desperate burst of information before its inevitable fall. My guess had been wrong, so catastrophically, suicidally wrong. The Archon was not vain, he was cunning. The flagship was not exposed, it was the bait. The entire carrion coil was a trap, a web of hidden weapons emplacements and boarding craft waiting in the dark. The Shadow Spectre squadrons, masters of stealth, had been allowed to approach, their silent engines bringing them deep into the killing zone before the trap was sprung. I threw myself at the heart crystal, my hands slamming against its surface. The pain of the psychic feedback was irrelevant. I opened my third eye, not with discipline, but with a raw, desperate force of will. The skeins blazed before me, the threads of our warriors, once gleaming silver, were now ensnared in a pulsating, thorny web of Drukhari violet. I saw the ambush unfold, nets of darklight energy scything through our formations, ghost ships decloaking to vomit hordes of shrieking Kabalites onto the hulls of our vessels. I saw Kaelor, his silver hawk helm now scarred and blackened, fighting back to back with his honor guard on the bridge of his command ship, the air thick with the screams of the dying and the foul laughter of the Drukhari. His thread was fraying, thinning to the point of imminent snapping. In moments, he and all his warriors would be dragged down into the hellish depths of Comorak, their souls destined for an eternity of torment that would make simple death seem like a blessing. I could save them. There was a path, a flicker of a possibility, a 1 in a billion chance. A nearby gas giant, unstable, its core ripe with exotic energies. A focused psychic blow, a lance of pure telekinetic force directed into its heart, could destabilize it. It would trigger a premature nova, a wave of incandescent plasma that would scour the entire sector. It would incinerate the Drukhari fleet, but it would also consume our own warriors. It was a mutual annihilation, a useless, spiteful act. But if I could manipulate the nova's shockwave, shape it, guide its leading edge with an impossible precision, I could create a narrow channel, a corridor of relative safety through the firestorm. It would be a battering ram of cosmic fury that would smash the Drukhari trap apart, while simultaneously providing a chaotic, violent screen for Kaelor's forces to escape. It was an act of creation and destruction on a scale I had never contemplated. It would require every erg of my power, every shred of my will, my entire being focused into a single divine instant. And as I focused my sight on that single, critical node of causality, the heart of the gas giant, the precise millisecond where my intervention would have to occur, the abyss opened before me. The crystal blindness, my personal void, was waiting for me there. It was vast, infinite. It was the point where my own thread ended. The choice was clear. To perform this act was to throw myself into that void. It was not merely to die, it was to become undone, to pour my very essence into the forge of creation and be annihilated in the process. I would not see the result. I would not know if Kaelor and his warriors escaped. I would not know if my sacrifice had saved them or merely hastened their demise in a different fire. I would be utterly, completely blind. My life, my entire existence on the path of the seer, had been a quest for certainty in an uncertain galaxy. Every choice, no matter how painful, was predicated on sight, on knowing the outcome. I had traded souls for the certainty of survival. But here, at the very end, fate presented me with the ultimate antithesis of my being. To make the most important choice of my life with no sight at all. To act not on knowledge, but on a sliver of hope. To perform an act of pure, irrational faith. Kaelor's faith in me had been a brand of shame. Now, my faith in him, in our people, had to be my salvation. I could let them die, and perhaps my own thread would continue for a few more wretched heartbeats in this dome of shadows. Or I could embrace the blindness, accept my fate, and make my end my final weapon. This then, is the burden of a Farseer. This is why we are a dying race. We are not merely worn down by the grief of our choices, we are consumed by them. We pour our souls, our sight, our very futures into the tapestry to mend the tears until there is nothing left of the weaver. We become the thread that is sacrificed. My hands on the heart crystal began to glow, not with the cool light of scrying, but with the white-hot intensity of a soul preparing to burn. I pulled all of my memories, all of my griefs, all of my long-lost hopes into the core of my being. The memory of Larion's last thought, of home. The pride I felt seeing Kaelor ascend to the rank of autarch. The sound of children laughing in the dome of the azure sun. I gathered it all, the love and the pain, the beauty and the horror, and forged it into a spear of incandescent will. The roar of infinite futures, my lifelong companion and tormentor, began to fade, drowned out by the rising crescendo of my own power. My physical body trembled, the wraith bone beneath my feet groaning under the strain. I was no longer a person. I was a conduit, a focus point for a power that would unmake me. I leaned into the blindness. I accepted the void. My final thought was not a vision, but a prayer, a whisper sent across the stars to Kaelor. Live. I pushed. The universe screamed. I felt my soul, my consciousness, my very identity tear away from my body, stretched across the void in an instant. It was a fire of unimaginable scale, a pain that was also an ecstasy, the feeling of a billion threads of fate rushing through me at once. I was the heart of the star. I was the shockwave. I was the fire and the space between the fire. I felt my essence unspooling, weaving itself into the fabric of the nova, my memories becoming the energy that shaped its fury. And then, nothing. The skeins vanished. The light went out. My third eye, my true eye, closed for the last time. The chorus of infinity, the shriek and whisper of all that could be, the sound that had been the dawn and dusk of every day of my life, fell silent. The burden was lifted. We walk a path of endless twilight, and we must learn to navigate by the light of the stars that have already died.